Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Welcome, everyone, to another live edition of the Node Investor. We'll be looking at these wild, crazy, never a dull moment crypto markets. What to expect? What is going on? I'm sure most of you, probably 99.999% of you, already know what's going on. You've seen the news, you've seen the Bitfinex, the FUD. Maybe not so much FUD, whatever. You've seen it all, but we'll quickly review what's going on. We'll take a look at the charts and have some good discussion around technical analysis versus perfectly timed news and fundamental changes in the markets. And just some thoughts around all of that good stuff. I'm your host again, as always, Node Investor here. We'll get to it. So let me see. Hopefully you can see my charts. It sounds like you guys can hear me. So I won't be talking to myself on the mic for 30 minutes before I figure it out. All good stuff. Everything is on sale. Yeah. You know, speaking of sales, I'm going to kick off a new sale for my video course beginning in May. And so we'll do another promotion for that in May. So look out for that. Let me see here. I'm going to pull up my chat windows and we'll get to it. So first things first, let's get to the news here. Of course, breaking yesterday, there was some news about a Bitfinex cover-up, losses of $850 million. And, you know, this is a pretty interesting story because it's very complicated in the sense that there's just so many entities involved here. You have Bitfinex, you have Tether, technically a separate entity. You have these holding companies. You have this company called, where is it here? This payments company basically out of Panama, the Crypto Capital Corp payment processor, and on and on and on. And, you know, it's just a lot of behind the scenes movement of money. And the short of it is they commingled funds, they lost funds to the tune of $850 million, which is a pretty good chunk of change, to be honest. And now it's kind of like, well, what happened? Where did it go? And to put into perspective, right, this was news, or not news, but this is an event that happened in October of 2018. Technically, this was, you know, past news and all that. It's just the news is now breaking as the New York Attorney General is, you know, releasing all of this yet. So is it live yet? Hopefully it is. You guys can hear me, right? Oh, man. Can you guys hear me? I'm thinking you can. You're making me nervous with those comments. Okay, anyway. And so this has already kind of happened, but nonetheless, right, it just, every time we see this Tether scare, this, you know, another potential issue here, another, thank you for confirming, another reason why Tether is insolvent, maybe Bitfinex is insolvent, and there's a little bit of a run on Bitfinex right now that people are kind of withdrawing, you know, taking a precautionary approach and just taking funds off. And there wasn't a response issued by Bitfinex talking about what's going on here. But the long story of it is there was a quick reaction to the market, as is always the case, right? And you get the big spike down, the news broke, and that's usually the way things go. It's shoot first, ask questions later. You know, the headlines come out, Bitfinex, Tether, what? Sell everything, dump it. We'll look at the quote unquote stable coins, all spiking as people are fleeing Tether, and just the craziness has happened and all this good stuff. But here's what the point I want to make, right? There's a couple of things going on here, right? There's also the Bitcoin futures expiry happening today for the April 2019 contracts. And in the past, we've seen some volatility around these dates leading into that. Maybe people are net short and price needs to drop. Their net long price needs to spike, but you're seeing some volatility around that. And there's always the question of manipulation, perfectly timed news. This was old news. Why did they wait until just now to release it and all that good stuff? But at the end of the day, myself as a technician, as someone who uses the charts, as someone who is generally a little bit more active in trading and making buy and sell decisions and exchanging positions, I do factor in the news. You got to pay attention to the catalysts and all that, fundamental changes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I put way more weight on price action and what the price action is telling me, because ultimately that is the marketplace. That is where the buyers and sellers are showing up, and this is where you're seeing it show up in the price. And that's what I'm basing my decision off of. And it's no surprise, right, that we're seeing a little bit of a pause here. I just happened to release, luckily, some of you may say, a very well-timed video yesterday talking about the slowdown in momentum. And of course, prices were still up here on the 40, the 5,500 level when I released that video. We hadn't quite seen that Tether spike lower. And many are going to say, oh, this was good timing. This was the news. This was options expiry. But in my video, I was talking about the slowdown in the momentum that we had been seeing to the upside as prices were approaching a little bit of a resistance zone. And it would not be unusual to see some pullback after the very strong move we have seen from this $3,300 level up to $5,600 level. I mean, it's just, you see the strong move, you had that initial spike, you get a pullback, still holding the moving averages. And I said the moving average is still holding, so technically you're still in an uptrend, but the momentum had slowed. There were some underlying signs of loss of strength. The alts were starting to lag, perhaps a leading indicator. And so the signs were there. There were certainly some red flags. And you could see this in the bearish divergences. If you're not familiar with what that is, just very quickly, there is a loss of momentum showing up in the RSI. You had a high RSI here around 86, 87. And then in this most recent price spike, it only went to 75, even though price made a new relative high. And so again, another sign saying, hey, maybe the buyers are starting to lose a little bit of steam here. And the MACD could just never even tick back into the green. I was waiting for it to tick into the green before rolling over again. And there was just a lot of other signs, right? Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash and Cardano and some of these that are just really rolling over for the last couple of weeks anyway, taking a little bit of a breather after a monster run in March. And so that being said, the news certainly was well timed, I think, right? Coming out right at prices at resistance, right at the high of the swing here, potentially very close to the next major resistance level. And so maybe this is just a short-lived dip and then we get another spike higher. But I don't think so. I think we're going to see a little bit more downside before a solid low is in. I think we're going to see some downside. Now, how does that downside play out, right? Is it a quick spike? Is it a slow grind? You get a quick bump up and then another leg down, right? That's anyone's guess as to how it ultimately would play out. But now that we've seen a couple of days of rolling over, even if we see a little bit of a green day here and there, I think this marks a pretty significant turning point after a very nice run-up that we've seen here for the last couple of months. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we're going to go all the way down to 3,100 or to 2K or anything like that. I don't know where ultimately it bottoms. Nobody does. But there's a couple of levels to be watching if we do continue to grind lower, which I think odds favor right now. We will see a little bit of more downside action. I mean, that's just purely looking at the charts, discounting the news and the sentiment and discounting any of that, just purely looking at the charts, based on probability, based on just my personal experience. When you see a pattern like this where it starts to top, makes a higher high, then really starts to roll over, if it breaks below first that 5K, which has really been the psychological support for a while, if it breaks below that, 4,800 is the next stop at least. And then below that, that tells me that you're going to start to see a little bit of a trend change at that point. Some pulling back, some backfilling, retesting some support, maybe making a higher low on the weekly chart. All that would be good stuff, especially several people I know have been waiting for the dip, right? This may be your chance. Just missed that big run up. Now everyone's kind of looking at the dip and saying, oh man, I was waiting for prices to pull back. And maybe when we start to get that pullback, we'll have to see how scary it really looks and people might not buy that dip, right? So just a couple of thoughts out there. But my point is the technical analysis, the charts were giving you some early clues. Yes, the news absolutely factored into the spike, the panic drop, however you want to call it. But it may have been just enough to kick off the momentum change, right? The catalyst for it to start turning the corner. And then at that point, the market kind of just starts feeding on itself. You break, you bounce, you can't get back above resistance. you start to pull back, more momentum kicks in, people start looking at the chart saying, maybe I should just take some profits, and then it just starts to kind of cascade on its own. And then at some point, there's going to be some support showing up. At some point, there'll be a price where the value is good enough for buyers that have been waiting, and they will start to step in and slowly start to buy back up. People that are going short at some point will start to cover and buy there and start adding more buying pressure and so forth. And the cycle continues, right? And just like we've seen in the past. So that's what I'm looking at here right now. The momentum was already signaling a slowdown. I actually maybe got out a little bit too early, but I think I had a pretty good exit here on my way out. And again, I even sent this out on Twitter. I actually got out a couple of days back. I got out back here as it started to roll over. And the reason was mostly price action, right? And I said, hey, we're still high on the daily chart. Things are still moving up. But I saw that big spike. We had that breakout, finally pushed above 5,500. Very quickly went up to 5,650, which was almost exactly the high that we saw in mid-November for that minor resistance zone. And then prices very quickly sold off from there, and they struggled to get back above, made a lower high, and then really started to roll over. And I started to just scale out at this point. I said, you know what, this looks like it's ready to pull back further, and so I'm going to get out of the way. Of course, the next day it bumped up again, but it never was able to clear this prior high right here. Just never could get back above that. Made one more test, and then we saw a really good drop after that. And since then, it's just kind of been the grind. And I've been telling the folks in the Slack group, I'm just sitting tight. I'm going to wait this one out, maybe looking for some short opportunities, but I'm just going to wait until we get back above the resistance and the market proves me wrong. And so that turned out to be a pretty good exit there from that perspective. And of course, we've dropped since then. And even if I got in here back at this point, you know, that's a plus 8% savings there on just that quick drop. Now, where do we go from here? Today, near term, I mean, we are a little bit oversold. You can see there's that initial spike lower. We've bounced here, pulling right back, making a little bit of a double bottom here, testing some support right around that 5,100 level. And so a bounce would not be unusual. It would make sense to see a bounce. And the question is going to be, where does the bounce take it, right? And right now, the price point to be watching, and this is on Coinbase, there's going to be this minor resistance, or not minor, this first resistance zone, this prior high, basically around 53.30. That was the point where price just sliced right through that yesterday. And then above that, this little support level that gave way right there between 5,400, basically in and around 5,400. And those are going to be your two kind of major resistance levels on the way up. So if we do get a bounce from here, the first level is going to be interesting because that lines up well with the exponential moving averages on the 4-hour time frame. And so that's what I'm going to be watching here. You could see a failure at that point, a lower high, and then another rollover, which ultimately would likely break below that 5K level if it fails right there and starts to roll over again. And that would be enough to reset some of the technicals, some of the oversold conditions, and would make for a good, in my opinion, risk-reward opportunity on the short side, if that's what you're looking at, right? So I'll be looking at that type of thing here on the way down. Right now, it's still just drifting lower. It is getting a little bit extended to the downside. The RSI on the 4-hour could still go lower before it's really considered, you know, extremely oversold. So it looks like we're breaking from a little bit of a bear flag this morning. This thing just bounced right into the moving averages, started to roll over again here in the last hour. And so kind of in no man's land. It is bouncing a little bit, maybe finding a double bottom. But in the intermediate term, next day, 2 days, couple of days, I'm leaning bearish, right? Yeah, we could get bounces along the way, but I'm going to just wait, let things kind of blow over, see where we go from there, and go from there. So 5K still holding. So if you're bullish and you're thinking, hey, 5K still holding, hey, that's positive. Things are still holding up there, technically still above the 22 EMA on the daily, and technically still in an uptrend. If it holds right here, right, this would be a higher low. You could still continue to the upside. But right now, it just feels like the momentum is really starting to shift in favor of the sellers. And so I'm going to take a much more cautious approach than I would have, say, back here in this first spike. Now, let's look at Tether, because that was an interesting story yesterday with all the price spike here. This is USD Tether on the USD dollar exchange rate here on Kraken, right? This is the daily chart. And it doesn't look like very much of a stable coin. And we've seen this here in the past, right? Where the last time we saw some FUD, remember in October, it dropped all the way down here to a quick spike down to 85 cents, but mostly it was just bottoming around that 95 cents, rallied, another FUD, scare here, and then just back and forth, back and forth. And here we are breaking again yesterday. And there's some questions there, what are you doing with Tether and all that? Now, normally, I have funds on several exchanges, but normally on the exchanges that are predominantly Tether based, that's usually where I go park when things look like they're rolling over. The exception is when we have a Tether scare that is causing some of the rollover. In those scenarios, I will not tether up. I will generally pick some other stable coin, and you can see what they're doing here versus Tether, right? You look at something like True USD versus Tether, big spike. And so that's what I've chosen to do. And I got out, pretty early yesterday. So it was nice because I'm technically still up versus Tether on that. You look at something like PAX versus Tether, again, having a big spike. And this is just people fleeing out of Tether into alternative stable coins. And so that's another way to hedge against the potential that maybe this turns into something serious on the Tether side. Who knows? I doubt it. Personally, I think eventually Tether will stabilize and normalize again and come back close to parity like it usually does. But you never know, right? So I'm just generally will just take the precautionary path and go park somewhere else. And if it really has one of those quick spikes up, I will basically be trading stablecoin pairs, right? I'll be doing in and out of Tether, PAX, or True USD. And you can get them some quick gains on those if you can time them right. So that's basically my approach. So I'm not holding any Tether at the moment. It's generally cash and some other stables. And again, this is on my trading accounts, long-term holds and all that fun stuff. Slightly different strategy there. But from a trading perspective, I generally am a lot quicker and will take my cues and my signals and not hesitate to sell if there's a reason to sell. So that's what I'm looking at here. Let's look at some of these other stables, quote unquote stables. You can see certainly the short interest is starting to spike here a little bit, but it's interesting that there's a little bit of a flee of capital. Here's the BTC shorts on Bitfinex starting to spike here in the last couple of days. So, writing was kind of on the wall that we were going to see some pullback anyway, guys. So not surprising. Of course, the catalyst, the reason why we see the pullback is always surprising. You never know what's going on. And you get these kind of out of nowhere news things that are just perfectly timed. But at the end of the day, the charts is what I take my cues from. So, all right. So let me read some of these comments. Let me catch up, answer some questions, and we'll certainly look at the charts here. Another thing to note here is the coin market cap, right? The BTC dominance. We had seen it dropping at a pretty steady rate here for the most of Q1 as many of these alts were having a very nice run. And then at the beginning of April, it bottomed. It was coming down to 50%, started to hold there, and then just slowly started to grind higher. And then in the last week, I saw a pretty good acceleration on the way up as some of these other altcoins were really starting to spike to the downside. Now, I think a lot of them are getting near-term oversold versus Bitcoin. And so you could see some pretty good little bounce trades. But if Bitcoin is going to see another leg down, then I would imagine that the alts would also take a little bit of a hit in that scenario. Going to the 7-day view, looking at the last 7 days, Bitcoin's technically only down 1% in the last 7 days, although it's down 5% in the last 24 hours. But that hasn't been the case for the rest of the altcoin market. Ethereum down 10% this week. Ripple 11%. Bitcoin Cash 13%. Look at Ethos down 14%. So, of course, not catastrophic numbers, but still down pretty decent, right? Down 22% for Ontology. Down 18% for VeChain. Down 23% for Omise Go. And so certainly has been a red week across the board. Not a lot of trades to the upside. It's been a slow trading week for me in the crypto space. Pretty much just taking it easy, been waiting it out, a couple little short trades here and there. But other than that, haven't really taken a whole lot of trades to the long side. Last weekend took a few, an Engine, Bats, some of that stuff. But this week has been relatively quiet from a crypto trading perspective here. Let me see here. So I think I answered the questions on Tether pairs, USD Tether. Could they be delisted? So here's the real concern that I've long held in terms of Tether, right? Even if Tether doesn't go away, even if it remains, on tradable or whatever, I could see a place where regulatory pressure gets so intense for Tether and Finex that they decide to just ban certain people from trading Tether, just like they did for US customers, right? You can't use Bitfinex. We're just not going to service you anymore. And you can see a scenario where they suddenly say, just like they did for the ICOs, right? It's like, oh, ICOs, US people can't invest in them anymore unless you're accredited, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they do something like that with Tether, and maybe they say, we're just going to not let people from the US or certain countries trade them. And in that scenario, you have to wonder, what do the exchanges do, right? Do they just say, okay, if you're from this jurisdiction, you can't use Tether, you got to use, True USD or some other stable, or do they decide to start delisting, right? That'd be the worst case scenario if you start delisting Tether pairs. Because, I use Tether equivalents a lot. Especially like something like Binance, right? If you go down my watch list, I've got USD Tether equivalents on just about most of these names here, right? Neo and Omise Go. And that's just kind of a nice alternative to BTC pairs. And so I certainly will look at both. So it would just be interesting to see what happens. For now, I think it's another panic. I don't expect it to really materialize into anything long-term or significant, but you never knew. And for now, I'm just going to sit tight, wait things out, just one day at a time, as I like to say. But, the stable coin trades have actually been pretty good here today. So Tether versus some of these other stables are, the other stables are winning right now. And so that's really been my trade here for now. Let's see here. What exchanges do you short? There's a few. It depends on your jurisdiction, of course. It depends if you're US or non-US and some other countries, but a few of the exchanges that offer margin trading, there's Polo, there's Kraken for US based customers. Non-US, you have Bitfinex, you have BitMEX, Deribit. So you've got quite a few of them. There's more than that, but those are kind of the biggies. Does Bitstamp offer margin? I don't believe so. I'm not sure, but there's a few. So that just kind of depends on where you're at in terms of margin trading and where you can short from. Yeah, and that's the thing that I like about Tether is it's very liquid, right? So when you're doing some quick trades, if you need to get in and out of, Tether is nice. Some of these other stables just don't have the liquidity yet, right? And it's really hard to get in and out smoothly if you're trying to go to, say, something like PAX or something, right? So liquidity is generally a big issue, and Tether has been helpful from that perspective, no doubt. Shorting BTC is stupid. Don't do it. If you don't know how to trade, yeah, that's probably good advice. Don't do it. If you know how to trade, then at the end of the day, you don't really care. You go long, you go short, you just go with the trend. It doesn't really matter. Just the same way I handle my stock trades, right? From an investment perspective, it's totally different mindset, different strategy. From a trading perspective, I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to direction, right? If I'm trading stocks or Forex or whatever, if the signal is there, you go long. If the signal is there, you go short, and you just go with it. I've not heard of that new Binance competitor. All right, so let me read some of these other comments, and then we'll get done here. I kind of wish Binance would do some margin trading, honestly. You're bearish? Bearish is probably a good thing to do right now. All right, so let's take a look at BTC here real quick, and then we'll move on to some of these other names. I'm going to look at the non-Tether pairs on BTC. So looking at it on Coinbase here one more time. Potential little double bottom forming, but I want to see this start holding above this moving average here before we begin to see a little bit more serious of a bounce. Until it can even get above the 1 hour 10 EMA, it's still very much in a downtrend. You saw this yesterday, the break, big spike lower, bounce. Look at where the bounce faded, right into that 10 EMA. Couldn't hold above, pulled back, and pretty much has just been grinding lower here today. We did see a spike lower here about an hour and a half ago. Again, just kind of testing that 5,000 support level again, seeing a little bit of a bounce. Yes, it's a little bit oversold in the near term, so a bounce would not be surprising. And you guys have already seen where I'm marking out some levels. On the upside, if we get a bounce, about 5,300 is going to be the next resistance target, and above that, 5,400. I would be really surprised if it just did one of these and just took out 5,400 and was right back to the races. If it did, awesome. Shows the strength of the bulls. But if I was putting a bet on it, I would say you get a bounce and it would fade somewhere between 5,300, 5,400 before rolling over again. That's assuming you get a bounce. So those are my thoughts there. Let's take a look at ETH and some of these others. Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash was breaking below a symmetrical pattern here, looking like a pretty good bearish break here. Where's my Bitcoin Cash? Looking at Bitcoin Cash USD. Let me highlight some of these. And so I was pointing this one out a couple of days ago as a potential breakout continuation. I never took a trade on it. I was just kind of waiting. It did have that attempt when Bitcoin spiked into 5,600 a couple days back. But until it broke the line, I wasn't going to do anything with it. I was just going to wait it out. And you saw that spike and then just quickly reversed. And it's not been able to get back on its feet here since then. And now it's really starting to roll over and breaking below some support here around that 260 level. And so you're starting to see that starting to really roll over. The moving averages look like they're about to cross over here in the next day or two. And so this one's not looking pretty. And there's really not a lot of support on the way down because this was just such a quick move to the upside. If we zoom in on a shorter time frame, you know, there's some little pauses, but you can see this was just a very quick spike. Really the next, I don't know if I would even call it support, but really the next level of support potentially is around that 240 level. But below that could be a quick spike lower. So something to be watching here for potential another leg down. Looking at Ethereum, I'm going to go back to Ethereum BTC first because ETH BTC is really the one I've been watching here. I'll go to the daily chart. It was setting out for a potential reversal. Couldn't break above. It looked like maybe he wanted to find a little double bottom here and then confirm and get above this blue line. But I wasn't going to mess around with it until it started to show some follow through to the upside. And ideally, I wanted it to get above this 3,400 level. Never even came close and just started to roll over. And so I'm not doing anything with ETH at the moment. Now, it is starting to hit some oversold conditions versus BTC on this daily chart. So a little bit of a bounce would not be surprising. But now that it's broken down, it's going to face some resistance here on the way up around that 3,200 level here on the BTC pair. So that's going to be your first target on the way up if there's a little bit of a bounce. Otherwise, a failure there could signify another leg to the downside. ETH USD was looking really nice and had been holding above this breakout point on the dollar pair around that 157 level. That was a breakout point. Tested it, looked like it was about to get going. And I was just waiting for this to break out to the upside before doing anything with it. I thought if it breaks to the upside here, this could turn the corner on the BTC pair. Of course, that didn't happen. Breaking lower, leading the way down. So as BTC has been selling off, this one has been selling off with a higher magnitude. Looking at XRP, you can probably guess my stance. Same story. Every time I see this chart for the last 2 months, it's very much in a downtrend. I'm not doing anything with it. It looks bearish. It's oversold for sure at this point, but I'm just not in the mood to catch any falling knives right now. So it's going to bounce eventually, right? But is it going to be one of these bounces like I've highlighted here on the chart where it's just this quick spike on the one day and then that's it and continues lower? Until it can really confirm that it's turning the trend, I'm just going to wait it out. Ideally, what would look good on this chart would be like a rally, pullback, maybe a higher low or a double bottom, and then a quick, strong rally off of that level. At that point, maybe I'd be looking at taking a reversal trade or something on that. But until we see something along those lines, just going to wait it out. There's just much better options, in my opinion, than XRP from a trading perspective. Litecoin. Litecoin, got to keep a Litecoin on the radar. The halvening is still happening here in August, and I think that's going to be a strong catalyst for this one for the next couple of months. So something to be watching. It had a monster move in 2019 as we kicked off the year. Very nice move. And I mean, go to the USD price here. I'll come back to this one, but I mean, just look at how nice of a move Litecoin had this year. Coming off the lows here at the beginning of the year. Where was that? The low was 23 bucks, sub 23 bucks. Went basically to $100 before finally pulling back, now down to $71. But what a move it has had. You can see here it's broken trend. I mentioned this one in the live stream for the Node Insiders. I did a private live stream on, was it Monday? Tuesday? One of those 2 days. And I mentioned that, you know, just kind of looking weak right now. It did try to bounce into this resistance. Wasn't able to. I thought most likely we're going to see another leg down. Of course, it's rolling over a little bit with BTC pulling in. But back to the Litecoin BTC pair, it's pulled right back to an interesting support level. And this is interesting because I had this highlighted here, and you're seeing this bounce and rally here a little bit. So same scenario. This would be nice to see a little bit of stabilization around this mark here, because that was the prior breakout point on the Litecoin BTC pair and has since fully retraced. If it can start to hold up, build some support above this yellow line, then I'd be looking for some trend continuation on Litecoin after some of this, you know, downward pressure starts to blow over. So something to be watching here. If it starts to close below that line on a daily chart basis, then you could see a drop down to this next support level. So something to be watching here. Still very much in a downtrend, but it is back to the breakout point. So interesting to see it bounce a little bit from right there. EOS was looking for a little bit of a bounce in EOS. Same story here, right back to some near-term support on EOS. And then below that, that's really your next level. That's these prior highs back here that it broke out from. So, you know, this zone, if you want to call it that, is really a key support level on the EOS BTC pair. So that's another one to be watching here. It's already been leading the way down, finding some support. This would be an ideal place for EOS to show some bounce action. EOS USD on Bitfinex. Back to that 440 level. Again, that was the breakout point. That's going to be an interesting one to be watching here for another potential bounce. A lot of these are just seeing this panic selling, Bitcoin, all that good stuff. If they can start to stabilize, no pun intended, around here, then I'm looking for some potential continuation here, because the daily picture, the big picture, it's still very much trending higher. And when you're in this broader upswing, you know, these pullbacks into support, pullbacks into prior breakout points, make for some good risk-reward entries. Of course, if it breaks below that, then you know that most likely will continue lower, and this is going to be a bigger top than we expect. So you got to have some risk management rules in place when you're taking shots at support, stuff like that. All right, let me go through the major names first, or continue going through the major names, and then I'll get through some of yours. So we looked at most of these here. We'll go Binance, Cardano, Tron, and then I'll start to jump around. I'll do Stellar too, and we'll start to kind of skip around and see what else is on the table here. So looking at Binance, of course, has been quite the leader here as of late, just powering higher, shaking off any fears. I mean, just Binance, BTC, hold it up very nicely. You look at most of the other alts, they're leading the way down. Binance, not so much. Binance is just showing some good relative strength, still holding above these moving averages. So this is going to be important, holding above this moving average pair. And it's important right now because you have a relative high here, a new high, technically, and we have since pulled back, right? So about a week and a half ago, we made that high after that breakout, pulling back, bouncing. What you don't want to see here is this bounce materialize into a new trend, a lower high, makes a new lower low, and then continues from there and starts a deeper retracement. And so that's going to be the level to be watching, right? This candle here, let me highlight that one. The big reversal candle we saw 3 days ago, that's your major support now, right? That one right there. You want to see that guy hold, because that's where the buyers really stepped in. They didn't let it close below the 22 EMA. You're seeing a little bit of bounce from there. If it undercuts that candle, most likely that's going to begin a retracement trend. And again, wouldn't be surprising because this one did highlight some bearish divergences. You had this run up here with new relative high here last week, but for the last month or longer, the RSI has really been lagging, right? Showing some momentum slowdown. And so again, never a sell signal in and of itself, but it is a warning flag that ultimately will confirm if there's a top and you get a little bit of retracement here. So that's what I'd be watching out for. Still showing some slowdown in momentum, but man, compared to most of the other alts, BNB is holding up very nicely. What I would personally rather see here than a bounce higher is just some sitting tight and bouncing around in this range, as I would set up a little bit of a base from which it could start to rally off from. If you look at BNB dollar, BNB tethers, again, very much in an uptrend, not breaking lower, just continue to power higher and testing these all-time highs back here in January of 2018, right around that $24 mark, testing it here. But man, what a beautiful chart. I mean, we all want every alt to look like this, right? Just powering higher from the December lows, just pretty much straight up around 460%. You can't ask for better than that. So very nice move on Binance. All right, haven't done any of the other alts, pretty much just done the top names, major cap names. And so we'll start with Stellar, Cardano, Tron, and then I will take some requests and look at charts for you guys. Oh, what happened? Coin market cap. It doesn't matter. I know what the names are. As long as my charts hold up okay. As long as the live stream holds up okay. If you guys stop, I'm going to just keep rambling and suddenly I go quiet. Chime in so I know you can't hear me anymore. All right, let's get to it. Tron, or yeah, we'll do Tron, Stellar, Cardano, and then we'll call it from there. So Cardano BTC, another one that's just been lagging, fully retraced from this breakout point that we saw here. Nice spike after the end of March, hit the target, fully retracing, man. Not even a pause or consolidation, just smack all the way right back down to the breakout point. So we'll see how it does here. But right now, there's no bounce in sight just yet. But this is going to be an interesting level to be watching, as this would be an ideal place for some support to show in. Otherwise, next major support is down here. But at that point, it just doesn't look very pretty. If it drops all the way down to there from here, that's just an ugly top at that point. But there'll be a bounce somewhere. Definitely starting to hit some oversold levels here on the daily. So we'll see if it can find some support at this breakout point. But nothing for me to do with it just yet. Now, I do like it from the dollar, or I was liking it from the USD pair. And a couple of days ago, it was looking much better. It was still holding above the 22 EMA. It was starting to put in a little bit of a bull flag. And so I was waiting for this line to clear. I wanted to see it break through the blue line. Of course, it never did. So we'll see where it goes from there. BTC pair, not looking so hot. Look at Stellar Lumens for the Binance. Oh, my, Stellar. Just the smackdown on the Stellar. And whoops. Just has not done a whole lot after, the Coinbase announcement, the spike higher, a little bit of a double top at that point, and has just pretty much been in a downtrend since then. That was kind of the last hurrah. And remember Stellar, this is an interesting one here because Stellar was just getting crushed here for months. And this line on my chart was this support, double bottom weekly support on March of 2018. And when Stellar was still dropping, I was highlighting this as saying, hey, this could be a place where maybe Stellar starts to bounce and we see some action. And sure enough, look at that. That's where it started to find a low. It popped, had a few false starts, but then finally moved, had a nice move. Of course, this culminated with Coinbase listing, but look at where it bounced right into. Hit the target, right into resistance, and that was pretty much it. Rolling over, slicing through that prior support. Looks like it's making a new relative low. And so very interesting to see that. And, and in my course, I talk about support and resistance quite a lot. I actually have a video, just specifically on that. And, indicators are helpful, and there's a lot of good stuff that you can use them for. But at the end of the day, support and resistance, that's just fundamental, right? That's the most critical element when you're doing chart analysis is where were the buyers and where were the sellers showing up? And very often, those are the turning points. And this is a great case study in that being the key turning points Prior resistance becomes new support, vice versa. And Stellar is just a nice example of how that played out. So regardless of the news and regardless of the catalysts, it's just people will respect those support and resistance levels. So interesting there to see that. But for now, breaking lower, we'll see where it goes. Most likely what tends to happen is you get a spike, it retests that support that it broke down from, can't get above it, and then you'll get another leg down. We'll see if that's what happens here. Tron BTC. Tron. What happened, Justin? Thought Tron was going to be like taking over the world here. Oh, man. Tron since February, man. That was really it. And do you guys remember what happened in February? Why Tron February was the top? Do you guys remember the run-up to February? BitTorrent. All the Tron holders are going to get their big bag of torrent coins, BTT, on the 11th, and then every 11th after that. But the first one was really the big one. And it's interesting to see that since then, Tron has pretty much been on the way down and fully retracing. I mean, if you go to this here, back to support, fully retracing this breakout point. You can see this big impulse candle here that broke above that resistance. I mean, that was a nice day for Tron. Broke the resistance there and was up basically 25% on the day. Very nice day for Tron. A little bit of a bull flag from that point and then just kicked off a rally pretty much right back to that day there. So interesting to see that. But is it bullish looking here? It's not. It's right at support. Maybe it bounces here. But from a trading perspective, I generally tend to bet on strength, and this one just doesn't look strong. All right. Woo! How long have we been going? My voice is getting tired. All right, so let me take a quick break. Let me look at some other stuff here. I'm going to close out the news items. Everybody knows Bitfinex, New York Attorney General, blah, 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 blah. They lost money, quote unquote, lost money to the tune of $800 million. That's not a bad amount of money to lose. Whoever found that money, lucky them, huh? I'm being facetious here, just so you guys know. Just messing around. All right, back to BTC here. Yeah, still looking weak. Still looking weak. What the heck? Did I delete my 10 EMA? Oh, no, I didn't. There it is. All right. Do I ever use Heikin-Ashis? I really don't. They can certainly be helpful for looking at trends and all that. And there's some strategies around using the Heikin-Ashi, like 3-candle trend when you get 2 greens and all that good stuff. I don't. I mean, I keep it pretty simple. That's just one thing I tend to preach a lot is keep it simple. I have nothing against any particular style or any particular indicator. If you want to count 1s and 9s on your candles, be my guest. If you want to use Elliott Wave, Ichimoku Cloud, VPVR, and use Heikin-Ashis to find your trends and all that, that's cool. I mean, there's really, everyone has a personal preference, personal style, things that work. But at the end of the day, what I always tell people is try to keep it as simple as possible, right? I mean, generally, my primary two are use MACDs and RSIs to look for bullish, bearish divergences, as well as overbought, oversold signals. I get a little bit more in depth with the RSI. I cover that in my video course. I talk about the bull and bear zones that I use to confirm uptrends and downtrends. But, I keep it relatively simple. I use 2 moving averages. And I use a lot of support and resistance. And of course, there's candlestick patterns and all that stuff that will help. But at the end of the day, keep it simple. What you will never see on my charts is, well, maybe you will, but I don't usually have them on, is, 15 different indicators. You won't see like 5 oscillators down here and, overlays with pivot levels and TD sequential counts, overlaid Ichimoku clouds and 5 moving averages. And I've got the 10 and the 22 and the 30 and the 50 and the 100 and the 200. And that's just not my style. And I don't think it's helpful, to be honest with you. I think if you need that many indicators, I think you got to get back to the basics, figure something out. But we'll see. Let's see here. So that's my long-winded answer for I generally don't use Heiken Ashi. I do have a trender analysis that I rarely use. Let me pull that up here. And you can see here it's got Heiken Ashi, right? And this is more just trend indicators. Clearly, Heiken Ashi has been red here for BTC. Another trend indicator you can use. This is MACD and RSI, or MACD, two different MACDs, but this one here is ADX, which is another trending indicator. But again, I don't really use this one a whole lot, to be honest with you. I'd rather use like Ichimoku or something for trending. All right. Let's go through some charts here. Before I do, quick shameless plug. For most of you already know about this, but for those of you that don't, I do have this video course, my new cryptocurrency 4-step course. I have different strategies, which I'm going to add a new strategy. I'm going to do a short selling strategy because a lot of you guys have been asking about that. And I did one for the live stream, the Node Insiders, and I'm going to have to redo that one, make it a little cleaner, but talk about different short strategies. And then I have a technical analysis series, the cardinal rules of technical analysis, moving averages, which ones I use, how I use them, MACD, RSI, Fibonacci, volume, which is very important, and support and resistance, right? The essentials. Risk management. If you're an active trader, you got to understand risk management. There's just no way around it. If you don't understand risk management, you can have the best strategy in the world, understand the best technical analysis in the world, but without risk management, you will not survive over the long haul. Trading psychology. I'm going to add another video to this. There's a lot of really good books that I've been reading around that topic that I would recommend. And then, of course, my old video course. If you're new to brand new to technical analysis, this is probably the best one to get. It's 3 hours long, and it's really just a quick course, cover all the essential patterns, candlesticks, what are they, very high level, but it's kind of a good primer if you're brand new. These other ones are much more in depth. All right, let's get to it. Let's do, we'll do ICX. There's a request for ICX here. So we'll do ICX dollar. Then I'll look at it from the BTC perspective. I was keeping an eye on this one. This one was actually on my radar this week. Was one of the few names that I really wanted to jump on. It had a nice breakout above this near-term resistance. Very strong candle too. A lot of volume started to come back in, hit the alert system. I thought, hey, this is looking pretty good. I'm going to look at it on a retracement. It started to finally pull back, but it just never stopped. It kept slicing down. If we look at it on the 4-hour view, this is what I was looking at. Had that spike, pulled back. I'm thinking maybe this is it, and then just really slides under. Now, it's still technically holding up this major support here around that 35-cent level. So that's going to have to hold. If it breaks below that, just not going to look pretty. So definitely want to see that one hold. Now, on the ICX BTC pair, ICX, not quite as strong looking. I mean, it was trying and it was looking good here on the same day, right? Looked like maybe it had undercut the lows and then quickly spiked higher, got back above moving averages on volume. I thought, all right, this is going to be one to be watching, but no follow through. Just kind of just sat tight, fizzled out. So, and a lot of it too, I think, is the broader markets, right? You look at most altcoins, they've not shown any relative strength versus Bitcoin. And we're just in that phase of the cycle, right, where alts are leading the way down. At some point, they will bottom before Bitcoin. That's usually the way it works. They start to lead the way up, and Bitcoin comes back, and it's just kind of the trade-off. And we do it all over again. All right, let's see here. BCN, BNB. Let me take some notes here because I'm going to miss all of these charts you guys are looking at. Doge. maybe I'll do Doge. Maybe. That's a big maybe. Dash. Yeah, we'll take a look at Dash. Olam. Let's take a look at that one. GNP, that's a name I haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, we'll look at Monero because it was on my list here this week as well. There was a few that I was watching. There was only a few. There wasn't very many. Like I was looking at Bitcoin Cash Dollar, ETH, Monero, Zcash, ICX. I mean, there was only a handful of names coming into the week, and most, nothing happened. There was no follow through, so didn't do a whole lot of trading this week. Did a lot of stock trading. 0x. Yeah, we'll take a look at 0x. Lumiere, huh? I haven't heard of that. Seen that one. We did EOS. If we have time, we'll cycle back through some of these. We did Ripple. All right, we got a handful. Raven. All right, we'll do Raven, and we'll see what happens next. We did Ripple already. Ripple's just in a big downtrend versus BTC. So Ethos. All right, we'll do that one. BQX. All right. Let's get to it here. We'll see how quickly we can get these out of the way. Monero BTC here. So I'll look at it two ways because I was looking at Monero dollar as a potential breakout trade. Didn't happen. And in all fairness, I actually did trade Monero last week. Took a shot at it. Never played out. So I just basically got out of the way. But what I was looking at was this break of this downtrend. Monero was looking like it had spiked, pulling back, finding the support. I was waiting for this downtrend to break. It finally did. And when it started to pull back in and hold above the line right here, this is where I started to buy back in. But it never continued, right? In this trade, generally, the way I like to see it play out is you get that breakout above the line, you get a quick pullback, and generally you want to see relatively quick follow through, right? Like a day or two, it's got to start pushing higher. It didn't. It just started to go sideways, chop around, fizzle out, and then it just started to drop. So just got out of the way for that guy from a trading perspective. And then what I did is I actually moved over to the USD pair and started looking at it from that side as a potential breakout trade because it was still looking pretty good from that perspective until today, of course. And this is what I was watching here, right? I was watching this setup. There was this higher low pattern starting to play out, potential ascending triangle base, but it could also be a potential double top, which now it's looking more like that one played out, right? And so I didn't want to jump the gun. I thought I'll just take it as a breakout trade. If it pushes above that 72 level, then I'm going to start looking at it. Looks good from there. Never did. Oops. So there's basically nothing for me to do on it now. Now that it's broken below this blue line here, this lower support trend line, it's not looking, it's not on my radar anymore. Basically, it's, that setup's not there anymore. It's kind of reset. So we'll see how this one plays out. But for now, it looks like it wants to go lower. It looks like, let me clear these lines so it just doesn't confuse you guys there. But, you saw the break lower yesterday on the news, bouncing right into these moving averages, and now it's starting to pull back a little bit. So until it can get back above this level, it's starting to look bearish. And, of course, on the BTC pair, just broke below some support. So until it can recover from that, not on my radar anymore. This is a major, this is a pretty big break of some support. So not looking too hot. Dash. Let's see, Dash BTC. Dash. Oh, Dash is done. Dash is done. Has been done, right? We had that big spike, pretty much hit some major targets, dropped back to support, did find a little bit of a bounce, not much, failed at the moving averages, undercut support, tried to rally. You see a quick spike higher, sucked in some buyers, and then down it goes. And here we are back to this level here, which was the lows that it put in early March. And that's where it's trading at now. So big top in place for Dash. Wow. See if we can bounce from here, but it's pretty much fully retraced that entire move from March to mid-April there. Dash dollar. Dash with some good trades to be had for sure. I did trade some of this along the way up. Some good trades to be had. I don't know why I had this line here, but obviously that's been broken. Let me clear this. I haven't looked at this chart in a while, as you can tell. Dash dollar just really breaking down here too. And this was, the major resistance level. Couldn't get back above that. Tried for about a month or 3 weeks. Now starting to roll over. So back down to 109,000 or $109, which means it's $109,000 for a Dash Masternode. All right. GNT. Looking at the Golem. There's a name from yesteryear. Golem. Golem's just been in this macro downtrend. When Golem first came out, from a fundamental perspective, I thought it was a great idea, right? But it was so early in the altcoin cycle. We'll look at GNT Bittrex, which is where I was trading it on back in the day. Back in the day, I like saying that. It makes me sound old. Back in my days, I used to trade Golem. And, it was just so early on in the cycle. They came out with the really cool product idea and all this good stuff. But as the ICO boom kicked off, more and more projects were basically invading their space. And fundamentally, I just don't think they're there. I just don't see it happening personally. Um, and so that's just my opinion. And so it's been in a macro downtrend for quite some time. You get the occasional spikes higher, but you can see, I mean, this is just sellers, bounces, sellers, and just bouncing off these major resistance levels, selling off, making new relative lows. So right now it's looking pretty weak, breaking lower here today, starting to undercut the most recent support, and probably will make another low. That's just my guess. Oh, let's see here. What was on the list? 0x. 0x protocol. Oh, 0x. Man, it had such a nice run too with the whole Coinbase listing, and it's just grinding lower. Did have a pretty good little bump here in March. Actually overshot that resistance a little bit, but then pulling right back in. These are higher time frames, by the way. I'm looking at the daily charts right now. You could probably move this line up here to this resistance. That would have been the place to make that. Makes more sense there because that was support back here, support here. Did vacillate around the line a little bit here, but then this most recent bounce pretty much straight to the line at that point. So that was really the target. I was looking at a lower target on that guy. I was looking at this level as the target. Did overshoot a little bit, but that's it. Pretty much trending lower though. Very steep. Holy smokes. Probably get a good bounce out of this here. I mean, just has been in a steep trend since April. Down 37%. Very oversold on the daily around 24, 25. Of course, that doesn't mean it has to bottom there, but you know, starting to hit those oversold levels. We'll see. On a bounce, you know, the first test is going to be that breakdown level. And so if it does bounce here, maybe a good bounce trade into the moving averages and at most into some resistance. So maybe one to look at for a bounce trade. That'd be a decent 20% bounce. Hey, not too bad from a trading perspective. I'll take a 20% bounce. So 0x. Raven coin. Raven, man, that was going up like crazy. Yeah, it's just kind of been chopping around. It looks like it's breaking a little bit here today or last few days. Finally gave the support here. This was looking really good here a few days ago, just because it had pulled back, rallied, pulled back to the support, held it for about 3 days, and then you saw this big green candle that shot above both moving averages on some pretty good volume, right? Relative to the prior days. That was well above average, but no follow through after that, right? It did spike higher and then just, you would have liked to see some more upside. Just couldn't, rolled back over. And of course, now it's losing that support. So not looking too good on this guy. Next level of support down is this prior breakout point here around 898. And then below that, you're going to be looking at around the mid sixes. So 640-ish. That's what I'd be watching here for potential support levels. Ethos. What's going on with all these altcoins, man? Why are they all red? Holy moly. Yeah, Ethos breaking below the lows. Man, that was a steep decline on Ethos. Now, this is a lower cap, low volume name. What is that market cap on Ethos these days? Where we're at. Ethos. A market cap of $11 million. Micro cap. And breaking lower. Breaking some support here on Ethos. I mean, you can say ultimate support is right there, right? That was the lows that it put in December. Had some good runs, but not looking too pretty right now. Had some good runs. That doesn't sound good. All right. Let's see here. Oh, do I wanna? Not really. Doge. The Doge coin. Elon's supposedly favorite coin. Doge. Look at this spike it had here. This is Doge on Polo, by the way. Nice spike, bam, straight down from there. Just, I don't trade Doge. I just never look at it for whatever reason. I know a lot of you guys love Doge. Don't neglect that like button. Thank you. Smash that like button, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's go take a look at some of the major caps real quick. I know some of you guys are joining late. We'll take a look at some of these names. We'll quickly recap the BTC action, what's going on, what to expect, what am I looking at here. Potential spike happening right now, a little bit of a low coming in. Maybe I'm still leaning bearish at this point in the near term, but certainly we can see some bounce action from here. Certainly get a little bit oversold, a little bit of a bullish divergence on this most recent spike lower, but on the 1 hour chart, even the shorter time frame, still below the moving averages. Until it gets above that, got to give the sellers the benefit of the doubt. On the daily view, though, not looking good. This most recent selling pressure we're seeing, yes, news driven, maybe CME futures driven, whatever. At the end of the day, this is confirming what I was looking at yesterday, the bearish divergence, potential top forming, and now we're seeing it. Price, if it closes today, will be the 2 days in a row below the 10 EMA. That's going to really be the first time that has happened since way back here, or maybe down here, right? But either way, before the breakout. So pretty significant, could potentially be signaling a little bit of a turn in the trend. How it plays out is anyone's guess. Do we get a low here, a spike, a higher low, and then another low to 4,800 or 4,600 or 4,200, right? Who knows? I'm going to just take my cues based on the price action. But for now, not leaning to the long side at this point. I will be looking at maybe some altcoin trades on the bounce, because some of these are just starting to get a little bit oversold. All right. All right. Zilliqa. I don't think Zill's looking hot. Maybe. Zill. Looking at Zill here. Move the charts for you guys. Now this one, kind of had some front running into the mainnet launch, and I'm surprised it topped so early ahead of that. I would have thought it would have bounced and then pulled back and had another rally into that. Just never happened. Did find a little bit of a bounce here going into the end of March, but for the most part, right, April has just been pretty bearish for Zill. Broke support, came right back down. A little bit of a bear flag right there. Look at that bear flag bounce on the daily. That's a classic bear flag. Bear flag bounce into the moving average pair. Like when I'm shorting BTC or ETH or something, that's kind of like my bread and butter short. All right, you look at something like this where it breaks below support, starts to bounce. See these moving averages? That's where the bear flag generally will fail, and then I'll take it once it starts to roll over and break below the flag, and then you take it front of the leg down. So classic action there. We'll see where it lands. It did undercut this support from November, so it's making new relative lows versus Bitcoin. Not looking too good. And this is one of the few names that, there's a lot of names that are still well above their November, December lows. Not Zill. Zill's looking relatively weak here. All right, let me go through some of this here, see if we can find any other names to look at. Oh my goodness, look at the automated watch list. Nothing on it. There's Binance Coin, Digix DAO, and the the stable coins, True USD, Paxos. Wow, that just really tells you the state of the market right now. Nice. Well, we already looked at Binance Coin, 10x. That's hilarious. Let's go look at 10x. Well, maybe it's not hilarious, but nothing here. Just bounce a little bit here today, but nothing to look at. Nothing to look at, literally nothing to look at. Digix DAO. Do you guys really want to see Digix DAO? Digix DAO. Wow, maybe it is Digix DAO. Showing a little action. I just never keep this on my radar anymore. Digix DAO. There you go. And that's it for the automated watch list. Not a whole lot on there. Any alerts? Wax is on the move. Let's see what's on the move here today. And if you're not familiar with this site, this is nodeinsiders.com. Yes, it is a subscription-based website. I also provide analysis. We do private live streams once a week, all that good stuff. And you get access as a bonus to my video course. Let's see, Wax on the move. Today, Theta was on the move for a little bit. That's about it. Dent, KuCoin, and Digix DAO. Wax, it's just bouncing. That's not a good looking chart. Theta coming off the lows a little bit here. That's going to be your first target here. This prior break here that I have highlighted, that line, maybe even a little bit lower. And it's already halfway there. It's going to be your first target on the bounce. What else? Okay. WAN chain. The WAN chain broke below. Look at that. When it finally gave way below this support, the next day was pretty quick spike down, 2 days in a row. Just bouncing. Let me see if there's a divergence showing up here on the daily. Kind of. You know, MACD's not quite as deep as it was on that first spike lower, but I mean, it's not by any means a bullish chart just yet. The moving averages are trending lower. You're seeing the resistance right into the moving average, right? Boom, bounces right into that, and then just sells off again. So until it starts to get above that at least and show some support, got to give the downtrend the benefit of the doubt. In my opinion, in my humblest of opinions, in my non-financial advice opinions, VeChain, you know, it's definitely one I keep on my radar. I do watch it a lot. I think, you know, from a long-term perspective, the idea is really good, right? The notion, the blockchain tracking of, you know, luxury goods and supply chain and all that. There's definitely some competition in the space for that kind of stuff. So it's going to be more an execution thing. You know, which project's going to be the one to pull it off. There's going to be competition from private blockchains for that kind of stuff. You know, IBM and FedEx is talking about it. And so it's definitely going to be a need that needs to be met for sure. Who's going to pull it off, right, is anyone's guess. There's quite a few names in that space. But I think VeChain's one to keep an eye on. VeChain was a slow trade for me in March, by the way. It was like the grind up. Finally hit the target. I was like, geez, VeChain took long enough. I was really watching it from the BTC pair. All right, we'll do 2 more, and then we will call it a stream. It's Friday. It's still kind of early my day. Didn't do a whole lot on the stock side today. Decided to take it slow and probably call it a day early today. Let's see here, WAN chain. What are the sheep doing at Bitfinex? Yeah, so we talked Tether and stables and all that good stuff here at the start of the stream. This is the true USD Tether pair. And you can clearly see there's been a flight into some of these alternative stable coins. There's PAX, right, which is another one here. Where is it on my charts? There we go. You know, PAX is another one that's popping higher, USD coin. And if you look at the Tether dollar pair, it's still looking ugly, right? Last time we saw this one bottom out around 95 cents or 0.95 parity. We'll see if that's the level. Yesterday, there was that extreme spike lower right around 0.955. Maybe that was the low, but for now, you know, I think there's still a little bit of concern, a little bit of fear, people maybe getting out of the way as a precaution. I know I did. I got out of the way. It so far turned out to be pretty good. Is it going to go away? Is Tether going to be delisted and all that stuff? You know, I'm definitely not in that camp. You know, at least not yet. I'm not thinking we're going to see this all go away. Probably see a retracement here eventually, and that's going to be the trade, right, for me. That's probably the only thing I'm looking at other than some short side trades for some of the other names. But some potential trades to be had there with some of this volatility that we're seeing in the quote unquote stable coins. So I say stable coins. Tether's always been volatile, right? Well, see how the weekend goes. All right, let me see if there's anything on my other watch list that I missed. Covered all these, covered Monero. BAT, we didn't cover BAT. No one asked for BAT. I'm kind of surprised by that. But BAT was a pretty good trade here over the last week. It is pausing here a little bit and holding above this relative breakout point. Now, there was this double top here, so maybe your resistance is closer to that level. Pulled right back in, and then, of course, had that very nice move here last weekend and spiking into, was that Saturday, Sunday, before pulling back, making a lower high here. And this is going to be interesting right now. It's kind of at a little bit of a juncture, decision point for BAT. Is this going to be a double bottom that then turns into a bounce and another leg higher to retest this high? Or is this just going to chop around here for a little bit in this zone before finally giving way and coming back to the next support level? Right now, I would say the latter. That's just kind of been the pattern for some of these other names. They've dropped, stopped for a little bit, and then dropped again. So we'll see. But looks like it's putting in a little bit of a near-term top. That was a nice move for BAT. What else was on my list? I think that was it. We covered most of these other names. Oh, we didn't cover Zcash. Yeah, Zcash was another one that I came into the week keeping an eye on, mostly from the dollar pair. And this was my rationale. I was watching this resistance trend line at the time, not anymore, of course. At the time, it was still holding above this prior support. And so I was thinking, okay, it's kind of decision time for Zcash from the dollar pair. I'd like to see this guy break out, and first target would have been the recent highs, and then above that, some other targets there. So that's what I was looking at for potential trade going into the week. And on the BTC pair, at the time, it was forming a potential double bottom. And I thought, if Zcash could break out on the dollar pair, this could culminate into a double bottom on the BTC daily pair. Of course, that didn't happen. That was the potential. You can see I've got the arrow with the question mark right there, and didn't do anything. Didn't front run it. Wasn't going to anticipate a bounce or anticipate a breakout. I was just going to wait, but it was on my watch list. Didn't happen. Breaking lower. So that idea is no longer on the table. Like so many of these others. All right. Well, my friends, thanks for being here today. Thanks for joining me on this live stream. I appreciate the comments, the questions. I appreciate the thumbs up. And I wish you all a great weekend. A good rest of your day. I'm going to talk and type at the same time. Neo, man, since breaking that downtrend, that was it. I was like, hey, Neo should bounce here. It didn't. Same with Ontology. Ontology, once it broke that downtrend, that was it, right? Broke the trend, bounced, couldn't get back above the trend, has just been down since then. So anyway, all right, guys. Hey, thanks for being here. Appreciate the comments, appreciate the support. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Talk to you next time. Take care.